Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author and motivator of Power Up Business, Life, and Dreams, Liah Kraft-Kristaine. She helps entrepreneurs, authors, and individuals to exceed their dreams. She teaches promo and marketing, the courage to step forward, sustainability through emotional intelligence, and unlocking quantum intelligence to make quantum leaps. She founded 5 businesses, is the author of over 20 books, is a consultant and educator, a builder of houses, and is formerly a practicing attorney and broadcaster on CNN and PBS. Among many media appearances, she was showcased on the Oprah Winfrey Show, bringing energy, fresh ideas, and real stories to everything that she touches. Enjoy this interview.
Oh, good to meet you.
Great to meet you. And my first question to you is, before we get into your life, I want to know, how did you survive the last couple of years with the pandemic? How did you navigate as a creative person, as a people person, and how has it subsequently changed the way that you are now that things are kind of opening up again?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It was almost like the world was put on pause. And I think I'm not the only person that did a lot of reflecting on my life and on the future and what kind of decision-making processes I would use in the future. And it certainly has changed. And I think that in the past, of course, focusing outward so much. And if you're a musician, you have to be focused outward, whether you reach people in person or in some other way. But one of the things that I've done in my life so much is speaking out around the world. And I loved it. I absolutely adored it. And I would sometimes be gone 200 days a year. But I think that given all the mechanisms we have now to get our voice heard in everywhere, with our ability to be seen and interview others and be interviewed and share our knowledge and share our juice. I think that this it was a push for people to find the ways to really connect when they couldn't be there in person. And I love the fact that it gave the planet a chance to breathe.
And I find that podcasting and the interview segment that you're talking about has been a really good way of therapeutically unifying all of us in this time that's been so divided and so full of one line or the other. I think it's good if we all can understand what we do and have some empathetic middle to say, you know what, we're all human, we're all really going after a lot of the same things.
Well, I love the phrase empathetic middle, and I am really hoping that we can reach that.
Yeah, I am too, for sure. So what we're going to do now is we're going to simplify and make what is on paper that's a lot for you maybe make a little bit more sense. I'm going to take and transport you to the front of a room of third graders at a career day, and one of the kids looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How would you answer them?
I communicate how people can not only live their lives better, but find what they were meant to do and make that thing as good as they can possibly make it.
So how did that's wonderfully said. So to kind of peel back some of these layers here, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A writer. I knew when I was 9 years old that I wanted to be a writer. And when I was 9, I started writing plays and recruiting all the kids in the neighborhood to come in and take parts. And I would be the director, and I would take a part, and I would string up sheets, and I would hand out flyers. And I went around the neighborhood and gathered adults who could pay a dime to come and see the performance. So that was part of writing, which was really into script writing, which I wasn't aware of at the time. But it's so interesting how so many of the things that we were drawn to as kids show up later in our lives. But I am of the firm belief that we have, many of us, multiple opportunities to go in what appears to be disparate directions, and yet it all somehow folds back in and blends. It's as if you pull together different colors of yarn and kind of blend it all together. Each step along the way, you have a chance to do that at a higher level and another higher level. So with my life, it's very easy to see. But when people hear that I went to law school and they hear that I've done other things that don't seem to have anything to do with, for example, business planning, I love to pull it all together. And the one vehicle in my life that has really pulled all of my background together is in the foundation that I created for teenage girls that are aging out of foster care who have no family, but they have dreams. And I can then teach these girls not only about what has saved my life, which was learning how to have emotional intelligence, how to guide myself, how to pull myself out of the slippery septic of the depressive thoughts, and get myself on a line that would help me be much more continuously productive rather than wasting time. But I teach these girls emotional intelligence, which is so much more than how to be happy. But God knows that happiness and learning how to do that may be the ticket to everything else.
For sure.
But there's so many things attached to that, like self-esteem, which I call soul esteem, so that people don't think that's all about learning to stand on the table and point at yourself. But all of these things that relate to living well. How do you manage stress? How do you set your goals and walk yourself toward that in a way that will help get you there? And as a kid, I used to write my plan every day. I didn't have 15 minutes that were not used. And I can't say that was what kids should be like. It worked for me. By the time I was 12 years old, I had 15 piano students. And that I found out later was pretty strange. But I look at these things, teaching these girls emotional intelligence and teaching them how to become an entrepreneur if that's what they want to do. And if they have an interest in how to build a house, to learn how to do that, because if there's anything that shows you that you can create your world and you can create your life, it is learning to take something and take almost what looks like nothing and turn it into something that you can walk into, open the door, walk in, turn a light on. That is a miracle for some kids, and I love it to teach a room full of girls, and say, look, have you ever wondered how a light turns on and how you make a receptacle work? Because I love these things. Anything that can help anyone learn that they can go from here to there, anything they can do to reshape what they're looking at is going to be empowering. Period. And that is certainly the name of the game. And then there's another element in there, but it is so much emotionally driven. All of our life is emotionally driven. And if we can get just a bit beyond that and open up our minds to understand, I think, what is the greatest truth of all, then we are not quite home free, but we're certainly a lot better off than if we hadn't been exposed to it. And what I'm talking about there is called quantum intelligence. And in a nutshell, I'm sure, Joe, you've touched on that in your life. I have so many times, and it's really what shaped my life. But quantum intelligence is knowing that what you think about more continuously and put more energy into has an effect on other energy. And since we know that everything, events and things are comprised of energy, our thoughts have an effect on what happens in our lives, period. And if kids can understand that, it's going to help their lives move forward so much faster. If entrepreneurs and musicians and artists understand, if you want something great, then focus on the greatness of what you want and feel it and laugh it and love it. Smile about it, think about it, cherish it. And someday if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, there is the practicality of that, but you're going to get there. Something's going to happen. It's kind of like how I ended up on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I'm done now, Joe.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to get to. How is it that you caught the attention of probably one of the most famous people in the world historically for decades now? How did you pull her in?
I wrote my 5th book. My first 4 books were novels, and that book was a book written out of a place of enormous pain that I was emerging from, having gone through a whole dark night of the soul. I'm sure you know what I mean. I discovered that I did not want to practice law unless it benefited people who needed benefiting. And I quit my job with a law firm after having put myself through law school, put myself through college, and that was no small feat. And realizing I had taken such a long road to find out that it wasn't the fit I should have had. But that happened. I quit my job. My mother, who I was extremely close to, passed away. She was 52, and I left my marriage all at the same time. And I went to live in a basement. So it all came together, and I basically, I know it's going to sound wacko to a lot of people, but I basically couldn't get out of bed. I had been depressed for about 5 months, and I something caused me to sit up in my bed with hair raising up all over, and I just had a message that said, you know what to do, so do it. You have the tools, so use them. And I got out of bed, and on that day, excuse me, I started writing a book that ultimately turned into a book called 30 Days to Happiness, written for a person who needs help right now and needs it quick and can't read 20 pages of a chapter in The Road Less Traveled. They needed to get something that would change the way they're thinking right this minute, right now. And that book saved my life, and it started having a ripple effect. It was sent out to people, to friends of friends, and my sisters sent it out, and I started getting letters everywhere. And I had no idea how my book was even traveling to those places. And then I sent my book to a publisher after Random House, who had published 2 of my novels, wanted the book, but I was pretty naive and pretty young, and I didn't realize that nobody puts any money behind an author who isn't known. You have to get out there and promote every bit of it yourself. And I knew nothing about promoting, but I was kind of pulled in by a smaller publisher who specialized in books like that. And the one good thing that came out of that was that there was a woman in the publicity department. She sent it to the Oprah Show. I didn't even know she had sent it there, but I had hoped that they were doing something about it. They weren't communicating with me a lot. I also wrote on a piece of paper what I do when I really want to focus on something. I write a statement repeatedly, and any kind of, if it's something I want in the future, I say, I am now appearing on the Oprah Winfrey Show with 30 Days to Happiness. I'm now on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And you do that multiple times, sometimes a couple of times a day. And if you have doubts about it, you write those down and you knock them down and you knock them down. The things like, how is that ever going to happen? Well, if it could happen for somebody, it could happen for me. And you have to answer all of your objections yourself. What that does is it strengthens your resolve, saying somehow, some way, this book is going to get there. I didn't know how to reach Oprah Winfrey. I had no idea. But one morning at 6 a.m., I got a phone call, and it was a producer from the Oprah Winfrey Show. I was completely asleep, And this woman said, "We love your book, but can you talk?" And at 6 a.m., I could barely talk. But it was amazing. I stood up, I tried to shake myself off and get my brain working. But they loved the book, and it was just one magical thing to another, but it wasn't without its bumps. It definitely wasn't. I was lined up to go on the show right about this time of year, just before Christmas, and I was called to, they lined it up for a week from the time they called me. And I was about to go get on the plane to fly out of Atlanta to Chicago when I got a call from the producer saying, "We're canceling the show. We have a 70-mile-an-hour blizzard here. We're canceling the show. There's no way we can get an audience. We don't want to be here." And so I thought, okay, I did affirm this. I did believe it. I did create it. And I sat down and I wrote a new affirmation, and I said, I am on the very first live show of the new year on Oprah Winfrey. I'm on the very first show of the year. I'm on the very first show of the year. Because they can scrap a show. It's not like they have to stick with the schedule they have. They're probably lined up for at least 2 months out. So I wasn't even sure how I got into the show a week out. I think something else had either canceled or shifted. But I believed it could happen. I was sitting in my living room in Atlanta watching what I thought was the first show of the year on Oprah when my phone rang. I turned down the TV and answered it, and the producer said, "Hi, this is," I think her name was Carolyn, "from the Oprah Winfrey Show." I said, "How are you calling me in the middle of the show?" And she said, "It isn't the middle of the show. It's a rerun. We want you to be on the show tomorrow for the first show of the year. Would you go get on the next flight out, please?" I mean, these things are, we could call them miracles. They are. But I believe that we play a role in what happens in our lives, and we have to be creative enough to get an idea of what we want. What if I had just said, "Oh, they'll ask me back someday. Someday they're going to ask me back"? I don't know what would have happened.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, that's the wonder and beauty of life, is that you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I want to impart that to girls that are coming out of a difficult situation. But I want to impart that to every person out there who's trying to take their work and get it to the world, to ask themselves the question, what is the highest and best thing I could hope to achieve with what I'm doing? Or anything. What is the highest and best? What's the most fun? What's the most fun I could think of? What open-ended, wonderful thing? And then land on it and write it down. And maybe you'll change it. That's okay. But you say it in the present tense as if it is happening now, not the future. You don't keep pushing it out. I will be on that show. No, I am now on this show. Because the reason you do that, this is part of 30 Days to Happiness. If you say this in the present tense and you say it repeatedly, anything repeated often enough comes to be believed. And I think it becomes believed even by every cell of your body. And so you start wearing it. You start being it. And even if it hasn't happened yet, there you are. You are radiating that. You're shining that. You step into a room, and even if you haven't played Carnegie Hall, you are radiating that because it's now part of your DNA. That's what we're trying to get to.
You know, it's interesting. My stepdaughter, she's pretty strong-willed. She's a dancer. She's pretty talented. She's 17 now, and about a year ago for Christmas, for her birthday, I believe, I got her a placard that said yes on it. Yes, I can, something along those lines. And the one thing I've always told her is the story of how John Lennon fell in love with Yoko Ono. He went to an art museum in London. She had an exhibit, and she had this piece that was yellow, and there was a magnifying glass that was hanging from a string, and you had to climb up a ladder, take the magnifying glass, and look in the middle of the painting, and it was the word yes really small, but with the magnifying glass, you could, like, pull it in and out. And I always find that interesting because that's when he fell in love with her. And I always tell her that that's the thing. Like, for instance, in music, John Coltrane did not like the word no. You know, it's like there's something about what you're saying, which is if you tell yourself something that's positive or something that's good and you believe it, it's a manifest destiny almost.
Exactly. I mean, decades ago, we discovered that there is no form or matter in the middle of any cell or atom. So we knew what a neuron was. We knew that we had electrical impulses, but we thought that in the nucleus of each cell, certainly there would be matter there, but no, there isn't any. And there is nothing at all except for energy, electricity. And I believe that thought is the same kind of energy of everything that is around us. Thought is an energy. And we're finding, look at the artificial limbs that people are now able to move with their minds. We're coming into really, truly understanding so that people won't be able to say any longer, oh, that's just woo-woo stuff. It isn't woo-woo. It's people making their lives work because they figured out that it's not a good thing to say, well, I'll probably screw this up too. You can't say things like that and expect it to get better.
So how did these seeds of optimism begin for you in your life? You know, obviously you're at a point as a motivator and a role model for people. How did this start in your childhood where you felt that, you know, you can overcome, that you can do whatever you want with your life?
Well, that is one of those woo-woo stories, so I'm going to just try to make it really quick. I was born with 2 club feet and twisted legs. I didn't walk. I didn't walk without braces that ran from my knees down under my feet until I was 7. And that was the result of a single afternoon when I learned to look at people who were successfully running at a picnic. I learned to watch the winners. I learned to sort out from a group of kids running toward me where I was sitting at the base of a tree. I learned to watch and try to decipher who's going to win this race. And I was able to start realizing you can tell depending on the expectation, the confidence that some people just radiated. And then the next step that I was prompted to do was to try to ride along with the person I thought might win the foot race. And I did. And it's a little bit like saying, what would it be like to be that person for this minute? And I did that.
Wow, that's amazing. So for someone like you that motivates and is, you know, kind of a mentor, who's been a hero or a role model for you in your life consistently?
I don't even know that I could say that I've got one, except I may say Oprah, because she had so many reasons to have excuses, and she didn't. And that woman is exactly where she needs to be. She was born to be this. She definitely is a role model, but I've been really fortunate to be close with several people that have been quite amazing. Dr. Wayne Dyer was one of my closest friends, and we knew each other very, very well since, until his death, of course, which was a few years ago, but we were friends back in the 90s, and he was quite a guy. I mean, he was one of those, pack up your books in the trunk of your car, head out to a radio station and tell the world that it's in all the bookstores. Then go to all the bookstores and try to get them into the bookstores. he was a do-it-yourself guy, and then he started selling millions and millions and appearing on PBS television with a new program every single year and making that something that earned money for PBS, which is, fabulous, just fabulous. So I think there's a lot of people that I would look at, that for various reasons, and I would say that person's on my board of directors. Sophia Loren is one of them. I mean, this woman, take a look at her, she's still fabulous. But
yeah.
There's a lot of people that have, and the people, I guess I have to say, that I have always admired that are part of my board of directors, that are just my private board of directors that have never met me, are people that have risen from some obstacles. And I think those are the people that capture my attention more than someone who may have had it all handed to them. And that's not a slur against anyone who has been born with a lot, because I think that there's certainly challenges and things that we cannot see. You cannot see trauma, and trauma affects everything. So not to make a judgment about anyone, but for the people that I see doing things that not only benefit themselves and radiating what they have to share with the world, letting the world know what their gift is and benefiting the world that way, but making sure that you are doing something to share with the world in some way, in any way. Maybe it's only through your art, but I just love it when I see, a wonderful artist going out there working with street kids, or, it's just, you never know who might be inspired that day, that moment. You don't ever know who might be saved from doing self-harm that day. You don't know those things. And it's our job, if we have been given gifts, it's our job, I believe, to share. And the wonderful, weird thing is, there is no better feeling in the world. No better feeling in the world.
For sure. This next question that I have for you is, one of the top answers is either Oprah or Michelle Obama, and it's this: if you can meet anybody on the planet, which you've already met one of them, if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be?
I guess it would be Oprah, but I would not want to plunk into her life right now. I would have loved to enjoy the journey.
So talk to me a little bit about, this is about wisdom. This is about the journey that you've been on in your life. If you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger version, say in your 20s, and you could give that version a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained over all these years and the roads that you've taken, what would you tell your young version?
I would tell her, don't try to fit in to any model or mode that has already been created, no matter what they say. I had a wonderful agent for my novels, and when I started writing nonfiction, 30 Days to Happiness, she quit on me, and she said, you can only be this. You can't be that too. And you look around and you say, wait a minute. There's a lot of people that do more than one thing. And I have to say that it was a delicious feeling when I was on Oprah, and I was just hoping she was watching. But but I think that I know for too long, when I was primarily a speaker who would go out into a corporate setting, I tried to pour myself into what I thought they needed instead of sharing what I was best at sharing. And when I started sharing with corporations, for example, like a big group of sales reps at a quarterly meeting, and you can say a lot of things. There's a lot of topics that work, but when you start talking about quantum intelligence, when you start talking about shaping your reality and shaping yourself, that's more important than anything else. When I decided that I would take that leap and just give myself permission to veer what might have looked like, to veer off topic a little bit, I got the best responses across the board ever.
What is it that motivates you every day? You know, we all wake up, we have little victories, but what is it at the end of the proverbial day that you feel the best about that you get to do every day?
That's easy. I create e-courses. I put concepts together in ways that can be delivered through video and audio and written form. But if I can create something in a day, it doesn't have to be a course, but if I can shoot a video for part of a course, or I can create something that I, during the course of that, writing an email or having someone who wants to work with me share what I do, if I can get to that point where I say, I have really done something new today. I have pulled something from within me that I didn't even know was there, and I've put it together in a way that I've never done before, and I'm loving it. I'm loving the process. It's enlivening. It charges you up. It makes your body healthy. It makes your brain happy. It is the best honey for the planet, is if people could feel that way as much of the time as possible. But for me, creating. Yeah, creating.
Okay, well, I'm going to up the ante a little bit on this next question, and it's this. If you look back on your life, everything you've done, everything you've accomplished, what are you the proudest of? What is it that ultimately brings you the most pride?
I think it's having had the fortitude to stick to sharing the ideas through writing. Writing is not an easy thing. People have asked me, how have you written over 20 books? And I say, because I don't go to lunch. I can't be social when I am writing a book or writing anything. So I think I'm proudest of the fact, something I'm starting to release this year is a series of 12 books. And it's called Soul Esteem. It's a 12-book series of something that basically I felt was revealed to me when I kept asking the questions, why can I be an attorney? And yet in this situation, I seem to completely become invisible and lose myself. So I think it's having had the vision and the knowing that I was good at sharing these ideas and following through it and creating and completing that. And maybe, the other thing is that I didn't stop when I was writing that first book. When people would say, do you know how many books are submitted to publishers every year? And my answer was, you know what? I don't want to know. That is not my yardstick. My yardstick is, what is it that I know I need and want to do to create and help? That's what I'm doing. And somehow that first book didn't get published, but the next 3 did. And so that's another piece of anything you do, is you don't stop when the non-believers who haven't done with their lives what they need to get going and doing, you don't listen to them. And you have to honor your inner source, the inner being of you, which I know we all have. That is the wisdom part. And you listen to that and shut out anything that wants to shut you down.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your readers, fans, but you ultimately are the one that's in control of your life. You're living it. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
What's my perception of who I think I am?
Yeah, because there's all kinds of different perceptions. Everyone casts you in a different light to a certain degree, but you ultimately are the one that creates that light. So who is it that you think you are?
I think I'm a doer that doesn't let anything stop me, whatever that thing is. Although I have been a CNN broadcaster and I've written all of these books and I've done a lot of things, I also built a house and dried it in, built it with my own hands, with a friend and 2 carpenters for $8,000 because I needed a house. And I say, I am a person who dives into the unknown with full gusto. And that's who I am. That's really who I am. I have a lot of energy, and I'm so fortunate. I am so fortunate. Someone asked me once, what would be one word that would be an emblematic word of your life? And I didn't know this for myself. It popped out of my mouth, and I said, mobility. After I learned to walk when I was 7, I have treasured the gift of being mobile and never taken it for granted. And so I feel like I need to honor that gift, and I honor it in doing what needs to be done. And if it needs to be a house that gets built or a book that somebody needs because they've expressed such pain, they need to be able to find a way out of that. So I write a book, but I dive into it. It's going to get done. But again, it's not that I haven't been given wonderful things like good health. I really, really have. I'm out there running and riding my bike and kayaking and doing all of these things. And I don't take that for granted. I am so, so fortunate that I didn't have some kind of debilitating illness or disability that would have stopped me. After I stopped being a little kid with 2 club feet, I just feel that I was given everything to be able to have the ability to walk and move.
So, Liah, if anybody out there wants to get your books, learn more about you, your life, anything involving your life and world, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, I think the best place right now, and I'm adding to it, but it's called learn.lifecraft, LifeKraft.com, learn.lifecraft.com. They can also see my YouTube channel, which is Lifecraft with Liah KK. And there's a lot of stuff that someone, if they land on it one particular day, might say this was exactly what I needed to hear, which I would love to hear. So those 2 places are the best places to get some good stuff.
This has been wonderful, Liah. Thank you for opening up. You've got a wonderful story full of hope and optimism. Thank you for opening up and giving us your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me, Joe, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, and music from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.